Good morning, everyone. I want to give a particular welcome to Gabriel, who joins us for the first time this morning via an introduction from Philip. So, Gabriel, hi. Everybody wave hi. It's great to have you with us, and uh, thanks for hanging in there. When you do Zen introduction and then the sitting and then the Dharma talk, it ends up being a long morning. I know a lot of you remember that from your first time. So we appreciate the effort, Gabriel. Yeah, Gabriel, may I share a question from our time together? Is that okay with you? Okay. Yeah, nothing too personal. But an interesting place to start. Gabriel asked me, actually yesterday, I think, does Zen help a person develop discipline? Anybody want to answer that for me, for Gabriel? Just go ahead and unmute yourself. Jump in.
Yes.
In a word. Anything more to say about that, Jeff?
I think for me creatively, it's definitely super helpful. It's good at kind of, I think, removing the blocks removing the blocks that are in the way of me doing the work that I'm trying to accomplish, whatever that is. I'm a musician guy and whatnot, so I do a lot of that sort of writing type stuff, and it helps. It's helpful for me to give myself permission to fail and just kind of flow more. And also the practice itself, I think, is like sitting on a cushion is a challenge. To sit there and wrestle with your mind or let it go where it goes. And so that in and of itself is I think helpful in terms of discipline.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Ken.
Aloha all, good morning. What comes to mind is that discipline has its roots in disciple. I am a disciple to a practice. And so the practice becomes who I am. And so we discipline ourselves to a practice, and the practice becomes who we are. Thank you.
Beautifully said, Ken. Really, really wonderful. Ken's doing yoga at 11:30 in the Kundalini tradition. So if anybody's interested in that, that's we have our own Kundalini master here. So we take part in that. And maybe one more before we jump into the formal talk, if anybody has anything. Come on, Melissa. Or Dylan, go for it.
I would say the discipline arises from if you're able to sit for 30 minutes or an hour and just count to 10 or however you do it, you start to become comfortable with just being there. And so I find for like my music or my writing, I can do it every day because I don't have an expectation that it has to be some great crazy idea, but rather since I'm used to like sitting with myself for that amount of time, I have the discipline to just set aside an hour, whether a great thing happens or not. And it's much like the meditation. So it lowers your expectations, but it also creates a huge space for coming up with new ideas and all sorts of things. But yeah, there's the discipline of it definitely helps me day to day, like put in a few hours on music, even if I'm not feeling inspired. So that's how the discipline helps me.
Thanks, Dylan. See, Gabriel, how I do this? I make up for my answers by pulling it out of everyone else, because there's great wisdom out there as we all practice together. All right, so thank you everybody who jumped in, and we'll get a chance to chat a little bit more later. Beautiful storm this week, at least down here in LA. I don't know how it is like up there, Galen. Probably a lot of snow, since we're looking at you and all that snow. But really nice to have some rain and the storm and the washing clean of all of that. And I thought I'd take that opportunity to address a koan that appears, a little bit before midway in the Dharmakaya koans. I think it's number 61.
Yep.
Where Kyosho asks a monk, what is that sound outside? And in the Dharmakaya koans, the answer that the monk gives is it's the voice of the raindrops. I actually want to work with case 46, which is the same koan from the Blue Cliff record, and work with the expanded version of the koan. Slightly different wording in the expanded version. So this is case 46 of the Blue Cliff records. So in the way of koan study, a lot of the things that happen in the first 200 koans in the Dharmakaya, where you start, reappear later in the Mumonkan or the Blue Cliff record or the Book of Equanimity or Vines and Entanglements, and often in longer form. And teacher holds your feet to the fire in a different way. Here it is in the Blue Cliff record, The Sound of Raindrops. The introduction to the koan. Completion at a single stroke transcends ordinary and holy. Breaking down with a single word removes bondage and dissolves attachments. For the moment, leaving aside being like walking on ice, like running over sword blades, sitting in heaps of sound and form, walking on top of sound and form, wondrous function free. What about when going off instantly? We'll come back to that. The case itself, the koan, Kyosho asked a monk, what is that sound outside? The monk said, the sound of raindrops. Kyosho said, ordinary people are upside down, losing themselves in pursuit of things. The monk said, what about you? Kyosho said, getting to not losing myself. The monk said, what is the meaning of getting to not losing self? Kyosho said, and I'm going to switch here. Kyosho said, to attain the world of emptiness may not be so difficult, but to express the bare substance is hard.
Read that again.
So I'm going to read the case again. This is Maizumi Roshi's translation of it. Kyosho asked a monk, what is that sound outside? The sound of rain dripping, replied the monk. Kyosho said, ordinary people are upside down, falling into delusion about themselves and pursuing outside objects. What about yourself, your reverence? Asked the monk. Kyosho said, I am on the brink of falling into delusion about myself. The monk asked, what do you mean on the brink of falling into delusion about yourself? Kyosho said, to attain the world of emptiness may not be so difficult, but to express the bare substance is hard. There's a clue in this in working on koans, because I've just given you a couple of different sets of words for the same koan. We had the voice of the raindrops, the sound of the rain, the sound of rain dripping. I would just, for those of you working on koans, there's some coaching here is the words are important and not. These are translations of ancient texts. So what you want to get to is the essence. The verse that follows this koan, it's just lovely. In the empty hall, the sound of raindrops, even an expert can hardly reply. If you say he turned the flow back, that's still not understanding. Understanding, not understanding. On North Mountain, on South Mountain, more and more downpour. Let's look at the koan itself to start with. What is the sound outside? The sound of rain dripping. Lori and I and Nick and Luis went for a walk on Friday morning along the LA River. That's where that photo is from. Really beautiful little break in the storm. And, the LA River is a concrete channel that's been completely controlled so that large swaths of LA don't get washed out as they did in centuries past. But it was raining, it was raining hard. And then there was a sunbreak and it wasn't raining. There's a quality to this koan that I love, and there's different ways of looking at it. Is simply that it's raining. The two levels of our lives, the two levels of our practice. There's the direct experience of things. It's raining. And then there's like all these words in the koan, or the words we use in our lives to start describing the fact that it's raining and describing our lives and the occurrences of our lives. So there's always these two levels operating. There's always these two levels, direct experience and then somehow trying to express that experience. And that's the heart of koan study. We have a lot of people just newly starting koan study. And this is an important thing to recognize and to work with is not so much what's the story of what's going on or the story of your experience, but what's the experience and how do I express that? And so you see that in the first question, what's that sound outside? This is the teacher testing the monk. And the monk answers quite simply with some words. It's the sound of the rain dripping. Now, when you hit this koan and present it, or if you don't hit this koan, there's different ways to go at it. But what is that sound outside? We get into story in our heads. I know the first time after we were flooded out in New Mexico by the flash flood that brought down boulders about this big on us and 3 to 4 feet of sand and mud out of the mountains and across our road and filled the irrigation ditch and ruined part of the fields and surrounded but did not enter the house. It took a while before rain wasn't a huge story to me.
Years.
I mean, paying attention to Wonder Map and the different forecasts, and is that a microcell coming our way, and are we going to be flooded out again, and what does that mean? And all of that story and fear and worry that goes along with rain in that context. I mean, I recognize that Lori's sister was visiting us that weekend. Lori and Nick had already left, but Sid had gone out just prior to the flood coming down the mountain, and luckily she was back in the house. But anyway, that kind of trauma creates a certain kind of a story. And one of the things in our practice about direct experience versus story is, does this mean that you throw away all action and awareness? Sharma, you asked about this a couple of weeks ago. I mean, is this just, like, it's raining and it doesn't matter whether I get another flash flood or not, because everything will be okay. And if Lori's sister gets killed by a rolling boulder, well, that's the way it's supposed to be too. No. None of this is about not paying attention to the fire coming up toward Galen's home and getting the hell out of there. Or saving the animals or whatever it is. The practice is about being aware of what is so right now and then acting accordingly. But it's also about not getting caught in story. It's raining. So this koan operates at that level. A good friend of mine, a producer, Julie, a film producer, we worked together for many years, and I may have shared this with you before, but we developed this shorthand about the shit that was coming down on us, in the middle of a commercial production, because she's a producer and her role is to control it all, right? Control it all. And so, she was very big on controlling it all. But at a certain point, as I said to her, I said, Julie, you are the mountain and it's raining. And it's raining. You're the mountain. Be the mountain. And so that became our shorthand for years. One of us would look at the other one when either one of us was starting to spin out and just go, it's raining. It's raining. Let the rain happen. Be the mountain and then act accordingly. So there's that level of it, and then there's the aspect of koan study. How do you express it? Which is something that we all get to work on when we hit these koans ourselves. But then Kyosho goes on to say, ordinary people are upside down, falling into delusion about themselves and pursuing outside objects. So now we go to another place where the teacher and the student, the teacher and the monk, the master and the monk are working together. Ordinary people are upside down. This notion of being upside down comes up in a lot of the Zen literature and a lot of the study of koans. Being upside down, I think Dogen says, enlightenment is right here, being one with the 10,000 things, but because of our upside down views, we can't see it. Being upside down is simply topsy-turvy, turning things on their heads, not seeing things as they are, not recognizing that you yourself are awakened. And so we go off in the search of number 10 and counting our breath, or we go off in search of enlightenment or awakening or mastery and search outside of ourselves for the answer. It's got to be over there. It can't be here. I need to be fixed. So I'm going to go search out there. And that's what Kyosho is saying here. Ordinary people fall into delusion, searching outside of themselves, pursuing outside objects. The monk comes back, and now we're in Dharma combat. The monk comes back and says, well, what about you, Your Reverence? How does it work when you're Maizumi Roshi? How does it work when you're Tenshin Roshi? The master does not fall into the trap here, but rather says, I am on the brink of falling into delusion about myself. Now, this goes to being on that edge. In the introduction, it talks about walking on ice. Now that's a view of Zen mastery, of being able to walk on ice. Anybody ever tried to walk on ice without ice skates or crampons? Yeah. I mean, right? I mean, to successfully walk across ice, even if it's flat, there's like this beautiful dance of balance and friction and no friction and keeping moving. If you try to stop too fast, boom. So walking on ice or walking across swords, right, was the other thing in the introduction. So this practice is always about that edge, and the master is acknowledging this with, I am on the brink of falling into delusion about myself. Yes, I am on the brink, because the brink is always there. No matter how big our glimpse of enlightenment, or Gabriel, you brought up the term non-duality this morning. No matter how often or big or small or what glimpse we get of that, right? It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. And they were like, where did that go? I want more of that. I got to go searching for it. It must be over there. This Dharma talk sucks. I'm going to go listen to 3 more. Maybe it's in those, And that might be true, You got to find the teachers and the talks that work for you, and that's open to all of us. But it's like this constant, like, who's going to get me there? What is going to get me there? How do I attain this? That's always on the brink of falling into delusion, where we don't believe. We don't believe. A past teacher of mine, Yoshin, said that the greatest perpetration one can commit against another is to pretend that you don't get it. And I think that was a direct challenge to me at one point, where I'm like, really, what? Who am I? I don't get this. Why am I walking this path? Why am I in these robes? Why am I firing up Zoom? And the teacher held me to my feet to the fire. You don't get that out. It's not that easy. You don't get to say, I don't get it, and walk away and go fishing in Mexico. Or whatever your thing is. The monk asks, what do you mean on the brink of falling into delusion about yourself? And Kyosho's answer is, to attain the world of emptiness may not be so difficult, but to express the bare substance is hard. I was talking with Jokai Sensei about this koan at one point, and we were musing over the view here that to attain the world of emptiness, enlightenment may not be so difficult. Really? Really? And yet at times it's just right there. It's a gorgeous day. I'm in love. Everything, it's like, boom. I'm at one with the 10,000 things. There's no me and Ken. We're just one. It's all beautiful. That state of emptiness. But to express the bare substance is hard. And so then we have teacher after teacher, week after week, using words to do Dharma talks to try to untangle some of this and to help point the way. But I'd like to take it a little more personally than that. If all of us are awakened, and if it's there for all of us, then how do we live our lives? How do we live our lives? Where does the rubber meet the road? Or how? Okay, I get it. It's raining. Now what? And in a way, this last line, I'm going to challenge the ancients here. Maybe the line is upside down. What if you reversed it and said to express the bare substance is not so difficult, but to attain the world of emptiness is hard? Why not reverse those? Because what is your life but the direct expression of your true self? As long as we don't let story and nonsense get in the way. You know, which way is upside down here? You know, emptiness, enlightenment, always there. Now what do I do with it? Here I am. This, right here, in front of me. What do I do? How do I go? Take another step forward. The verse, in the empty hall, the sound of raindrops, even an expert can hardly reply. If you say she turned the flow back, that's still not understanding. Understanding, not understanding. On North Mountain or on South Mountain, more and more downpour, more and more rain. In the empty hall, the sound of raindrops reminds me of a time that Lori and I stood in the middle of the Pantheon in Rome. And, you know, if you've been there, it's like this huge, I mean, gargantuan cathedral or temple, essentially. But it has the roof is open. It's just got a big hole. That's the way it was constructed, and the light comes in. And so does the rain. And I remember standing in the Pantheon in a rainstorm, and the rain coming down through that hole, and the sound of the rain echoing through the Pantheon. In the empty hall, the sound of raindrops. Even an expert can hardly reply. How do you experience that? How do you describe it? If you say he turned back the flow, that's still not understanding. Now, this goes directly to, I'm not thinking. That's a direct experience. I turned back the flow, the tide, the monkey mind. I got this. Well, is that the true understanding? And then he goes on the verse, understanding, not understanding. North Mountain, South Mountain, the rain keeps pouring. And I love the beginningless, endless nature of that. Like, when did the rain start? When did it stop? When did my thoughts start? Where do they stop? Where does my life start? Where does it stop? Galen shared with us some weeks ago, a couple months ago, I think it was. He asked one of us, I don't remember which, like, do you remember being born? You know, when did your life begin? Not the story of I was born on December 13th on a Saturday and my mom blah blah blah. But what's your direct experience of when your life began? It's going to also give us some freedom from when did it end? When does it end? When did it end? So this beginningless, endless nature of the rain in the Pantheon, the rain in the hall. And I love that too, because, you know, the sun came out yesterday, and Lori and I ran up toward Mount Lucan in the San Gabriels, and there's a lookout on the Mount Lucan Road that if you haven't ever done it, you should get up there, because this lookout looks out over all of the LA basin. And when it's clear like it was yesterday, you see all of Los Angeles. You can see all the way to Yokoji. You can see the ocean in Catalina, Long Beach. Everything is spread out, vast and wide. And you go, wow, what a beautiful day. What a gorgeous day. And don't we do that? The sun comes out and they're like, Yeah, the sun after a rain. So did the sun make that day beautiful, or did the rain make it beautiful? Was the beautiful day right here, right now, or was it yesterday in the middle of the rain when it was all dark? What makes the sky clear? What makes the sun come out? Where does it begin and end? There's another, famous Zen thing, about the tree, the log, and the ash.
Mhm.
Which is it? I hold this thing up. Is it a tree, or is it ash, or is it a log? Which day was beautiful? Which part of my life do I celebrate? The introduction to this is worth touching on, and then I'll shut up. Completion at a single stroke transcends ordinary and holy. Breaking down with a single word removes bondage and dissolves attachment. This really just goes to that possibility of the instantaneous realization, like Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, like thunder strikes the crown, in that other koan, pebble hits the bamboo stick, over and over and over. And for each of us too, just that moment where you see it. Completion at a single stroke. We talked about walking on ice and running over sword blades. There's the sitting in heaps of sound and form, walking on top of sound and form, wondrous function free. This is that, the quality that is sometimes observed in Zen students of like, wow, they just kind of, there's all this sound and chaos and fury, and then just, that's what this is touching on. Sitting in heaps of sound and form. In the chaos, how are you? And then what about when going off instantly? This introduction is almost instructions more to teaching than practicing, but it talks about that relationship of student teacher and the word, or the little nudge that pushes us. Hey, Dan, stop pretending that you don't get it, or whatever it is. That nudge from each of us to each other to go, come on, really? You're going to pretend? Stop pretending. Just go walk on the ice. Somebody else is going to see you walking across that ice and go, that is really cool. How do I do that? And then Gabriel, they end up here for 3 hours on a Sunday. Anyway, I just wanted to work with this koan. I mean, what a beautiful week. Rain and sun breaks, the concrete river with trash flowing down it.
Caught in the trees.
Caught in the trees. And right next to the white plastic bag fluttering where it's caught in the tree is a white egret. The same white. The egret just there, doing slow kenhin. That's probably enough Zen geekiness. This practice can be a lot of fun if you hold it that way. And remember, you are the awakened one. The question is, how are you going to walk on that ice? How are you going to dance on those swords? What's that sound outside the window? Pretty cool, and open to all of us. So I will stop the formal talk there and go to gallery view and see if any of you have anything to add or say or ask. Anything. It's wide open.
I have a question about the rain. Isn't Is it also a feature of this koan that the rain needs something else to make a sound? Like the sound of the rain drippingness, it requires the ground to fall upon and then the ear to hear. And there's like a little interdependence. And it's not just raindrops, it's raindrops hitting something.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Dylan, that's beautifully stated, and not really a question. I mean, that's a beautiful teaching there. You'll often hear the expression, he or she who sees through these eyes and hears through these ears and touches through these hands. The Zen sixth sense of the mind is that experience you just described. Sound is a word. Another clue for you, those of you embarking on koan study, sound is just a word. Raindrop is a word. What is that direct experience? Pavement, perception, water falling out of the sky, ear. Yeah. Nice teaching, Dylan. Same with music though, right? Where's Dylan in the music?
Mhm.
You can answer that.
To be determined.
To be determined. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Good enough answer for you since you gave it. Gabriel, are you raising your hand?
Yes.
Go for it.
It seems like there's kind of two different parts to that, and I think you spoke about it, but I think I'm having difficulty seeing how they work with each other. It seems like two kind of separate things, but it wouldn't make sense unless, like, it wouldn't make sense that they're two separate things. Like, I know that they are connected, I just am struggling to see how.
Which are the they? Help me.
Like the two parts of the verse, like going from talking about the rain and then talking about um like material, like being on ice, or like I forget.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, part of that is me using words to tease out different parts of it. Okay, but I mean, first of all, there's just what's that sound outside, and this monk's expression, at least, of it's the sound of rain dripping, right? And at the simplest level in working with koans and working with your understanding of the world and the way it functions with our mind is really what Dylan just talked about. And you referenced this morning when you said non-duality, right? Is there rain? Is there pavement? Is there me? Is there ear? And the full and beautiful experience of that is no. Actually, none of those things exist separately. None of those things exist separately. And yet, if I walk outside, I get wet. Right? And we do have to function in this world in that way. And so then, at least my take on the walking on ice is when you get more adept at having that experience and yet still walking outside into the world. That's like that trick of walking on ice, which is difficult and yet looks easy if you pull it off. So that's where I think that walking on ice is actually really beautiful. So hard to do. How did he do that? You mentioned that this morning in saying it seems to me that Zen students have this quality. But, you know, it comes from experiencing what Dylan described and yet functioning in the world from that experience, not just retreating onto a mountaintop. In technical terms, absolute and relative, or absolute samadhi and positive samadhi. In the absolute, it's like, yeah, everything fell away, nothing exists. It's just, you know, in positive samadhi or in the relative world, you know, it's raining, the ice is on the road. What do I do with my car? You know, and we as humans have a wonderful opportunity to exist in both of those worlds. And as Zen students, can take that experience into the relative world in a way that other people can see it. Does that help? Try not to use too much Zen lingo, you know, but really it's like, you know, when I was on mile 47 of 52 miles in Arizona, Zane Grey ultra marathon, and running through, it was a tremendous thunder and lightning storm, and actually quite dangerous to be in because I was in the forest and the lightning was right there. I had never experienced that kind of freedom before. I just, like, my pace picked up like triple time. I was laughing and screaming and yelling. And when I came across the finish line, Lori was like, wow, that was scary. And I was just like, you know, because it was like just purely being alive. You know, that's what Dylan talks about. There was no lightning, there was no thunder, there was no forest, there was no den, there was no trail, there were no running shoes. It was just like, yes. And then you come back down the mountain and try to express that. And that's where the koan says, you know, that is hard. I mean, look how many words I'm throwing at it. Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go Philip.
Okay. Yeah, I on that note of just this idea of the rain and the walking on ice skillfully and whatever, we have such and such experience of everything's one, but then you go pay your bills. I remember, so I would always ride my bike to work and pull my daughter on like a trailer bike to go to work, then to come home. And one day we're coming home and it started raining really intensely, like out of nowhere, seemingly. And I just had this experience of like being the rain and biking and just feeling my body and no separation. And I was just laughing and riding my bike, and everything is just this, everything is this moment, blah, blah, blah. And then I looked back and my daughter was crying. Because she was scared of the rain, and she was scared of like how I was completely lost in the moment, you know? And for me, that really, and then I was like, well, Kai sort of came back down to earth, you know? And for me, it speaks to that walking on the ice, you know, walking on the ice. Okay, yeah, it's all good. Everything's great. But okay, you have to take your daughter home and she doesn't know what's going on, you know, and her experience is of being separate from the rain in that moment, or her experiences of being scared, you know, and then living in that place where everything's one, but you also you know, she's her also. And I mean, that part of the introduction really speaks to me, and that is our practice, you know. So thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Yeah.
It appears once again I should have stopped talking sooner and just let everybody else go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's kind of like this balance, right? That it talks about is where that dance on the ice, you know, where it's that place in the middle, that space where there's not aversion or clinging, you know, there's just the experience of what's currently happening. You know, it's just the rain. It's not like, oh, there's this storm and it's bouncing off this and it's doing this and it's doing that, right? Like all of it's there, but it's just the rain, you know, and there's no story or anything there behind it. And what really struck me is the most I think of it is when he asked the master, right? And he says, I'm on the brink. Like just how delicate that balance is, that no matter how long you sit on that cushion, you can be back there like that, you know, and you can come back from that just as fast. As I think the part that hit me the most, right, is like you're walking on ice and just as fast as you're slipping, you can be not slipping. You know, it's just,
yeah.
This one, I have a lot. There's a lot of talks that I sit on. I'm like, yeah, that's good stuff. But then every once in a while, you'll have that one that just kind of, it just hits you right there, and that was today. So thank you for that.
Well, thank God. Thank you. I mean, Mark, you know, it's also, as Philip said, and your daughter needs to be taken care of. You know, you're walking nicely on that ice. If someone else falls through, get to work, right? Get to work. I must be saying something that's like, hey, Siri, because Lori's phone keeps answering me. Sharma.
I just it's sort of a question, but it's also just a reaction. When I think, how do you walk on the ice? I think you walk on the ice. You know what I mean? Like so whatever happens to you, happens to you. But the action is, you do it. That's it. And I don't know if that's too simplistic. I mean, I understand the idea of sort of being in the world, but not of the world, like on sort of balancing. But isn't that, I mean, to me, that's what Zen is. It's like, how do you walk on the ice? You walk on the ice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how far off I am.
No, Sharma, what stands between awakened Sharma walking through the world?
What stands in the way?
Yeah.
I stand in the way. I mean,
and specifically what I?
The thinking I.
Yeah, the conceptual I.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I suggested that these last two lines could be upside down in themselves. Because as you said, just start walking. Take awakened Sharma out there. When you see conceptual Sharma, go back to one and start walking again. You know? I mean, and I'm using your name because we're talking, but this applies to all of us. I had some major screw ups this week. Dan really got in the way. Ask Lori. You know, but then as Mark said, you know, do you recover yourself? Do you recover yourself?
With koan study, I don't know how off this is either. It's sort of like the process of taking what is completely there and simple, and then complicating it like in all these sort of different ways to get back to what it is. And I kind of sometimes in my head sort of make fun of koans, like I create them that are sort of, they're not sarcastic, but they're just like, there's something silly going on. And so that's what I'm wondering is it's like taking something that is and creating a lot to get back to what is. Is that
Well,
part of it?
I mean, yeah, you can put it on the koan, or we could put it on ourselves that we're the ones complicating it, because actually
Yeah.
the breakthrough on any koan is when you just see it for what it is. Remember, there's stories of interactions, and they are tools, levers for us to unlock our ways of thinking and to see things from a different way. So, I don't want to play word games too much, but
No.
but who's complicating it? Usually I'm the one complicating it, not the koan. Yeah. Lori?
Oh,
Got.
I'm complicating it.
I
Again.
am.
Oh.
Any of us, Sharma.
I do have something.
Yeah. Hang on. Get Lori on screen here. Go, Lori.
Well, I think that walking on the ice is a wonderful place to be. I mean, as a human, we don't always have the luxury of seeing ourselves in that primal mode, even though we always are. We get caught up in different aspects of our being, and obviously our stories validate our position around different aspects of being. But all of that goes away, when you have to just walk on the ice. You just have to get across to the other side, and that's such a blessed spot to be in. I mean, if I can just simplify where I am right now to that point, that's a level of consciousness I aspire to, and will I ever get there? I don't know, but it's worth aspiring to. It's worth the work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I have this question, like, on this kind of materializing this emptiness is like the hard part, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand with myself kind of this letting go of the story is really important, right? This kind of merging with everything in order to kind of act accordingly, right? And to act in a non-diluted way. But with others who kind of have stories that are important to them or like are valid to their experience, it seems like to kind of get them to say like, oh, you don't deal with injustice, or like you don't suffer these things, and that like this is just a story that you're kind of wrapping yourself in, seems kind of like that is the difficulty in like materializing this void in a sense, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
kind of sharing this with others, or like to me, like I want to be compassionate to others who are like, you know what I mean, instead of like kind of telling them that they're in this story. So yeah, I'm kind of curious how, sorry, I'm like this is all just scrambled eggs right now.
No. It's very good, very good, and you're right on it. And the answer is, it may sound self-serving, but the answer is keep going. Because this koan actually is pointing to exactly what you said. To attain the world of emptiness may not be so difficult. Okay, I get it. I saw it. Expressing the bare substance is hard. How do you get that right? Because look, Gabriel, and we talked about this last week quite openly. Where there is injustice, there is an injustice, and action is required. Okay. So it's not history or reality that we're trying to ignore or saying, oh, that's just your psychological story. No. I mean, people are oppressed, people are abused, people are taken advantage of, people are hurt. And part of our job as awakened Zen students is to see that clearly and act appropriately. So you're right on the point of it. And that's the skill. That's why that metaphor of walking on ice, right? It's a real skill. It's a real skill. There's a victim empowered mindset bit of training that we're actually going to do in the Zazenkai coming up on March 6th. I'm going to do that in the afternoon. But that's a real important part of that training, Gabriel, is when we say accept responsibility for your role in things, that's not about blame, and that's not about absolving bad action or slipping into some nirvana-like state of inaction. It's just like see things as they are and then wield the sword skillfully. So it's a big part of our practice. You nailed it right there. It's that is the edge of the sword to walk on. Because you're right. You go out there and go, oh, homeless person, that's just a story. You're not hungry. Like, what good is that? You might as well take Zen and just throw it away at that point.
I'm reminded, this is something that I hear Tenshin Roshi say a lot, is just the Buddha, he had like 6 years of intense practice to attain his like one day of like everything is one, the wonder of wonders, like everything is lightened, whatever. And then the next 40 years of his life, he's teaching. And it's not like he was teaching in one way. Yeah. He like had different types of practices that he adapted to the appropriateness of the person and the appropriateness of the situation. He didn't walk around just saying, everything's empty, guys. Okay, get over yourself. The precepts that he had people follow would be different at different times. The advice that he gave to this person would be slightly different than this person. And like that's our practice is being present and adjusting with the life in the appropriate way, and it never ends.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Phil. Surveying the screen. Everybody good?
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. All right. Let's ring the bell, and then Melissa has some announcements, and then we'll let you all run to Tenshin Roshi's talk at 11:30, or Ken's yoga at 11:30, or just the rest of your gorgeous Sunday, courtesy of All the Rain.